Okay, hello everyone, welcome. In the interest of time, I will go ahead and get us started. I haven't seen Assemblymember McCarty log in yet, but that's okay. I will just start our welcomes and then give him a little bit of time. So welcome to our DELSA event for our semester. I know this is not kind of the traditional way that we would have held it, but I think actually we've probably been able to get some folks from areas that maybe wouldn't have been able to come if we were in person. So trying to look at the bright side of things, and we're really excited to have all of you here. I would like to just kind of quickly thank the rest of my DELSA team for their support and help in the organization of this event. It's really been wonderful having you all to work with this year. We also actually have some of our EDD faculty here. Obviously, we are indebted and thankful to them for attending and for the instruction that they help us with. Our fellow students, thank you for also being here. We love you all. We also are actually honored to have some of our faculty and some students from our partner program, the PPA. So this is really exciting. Also, I guess I should introduce myself. I know one thing that I unfortunately do is I assume that because my name is there, here I am. But I am Rebecca Woolston, so I'm in cohort 13. This is my second year in the program, and I am the DELSA president for this academic year. It has been really fun, really interesting kind of navigating this virtual space and how we can continue to try and create community, study groups, you know, all of those fun things while we are in our own little caves. That's what I call my office, because sometimes you just spend the day in there and then have to emerge and are blinded by the light. So I just want to quickly go over a few housekeeping things as well. Our EDD students and our alumni, we will be moving to breakout rooms after our guest speaker and our Q&A session. Because of that, I can't host this actually in a webinar format. So I would like to also just ask if everyone makes sure that their mics are muted to help kind of cut down on the background noise. We do have the option at the end for a little bit of live Q&A. I do want to ask if you have a question for Assemblymember McCarty, if you will just direct message that to me so that we don't kind of overwhelm the chat with those things. And it'll be a little bit easier for me to see. We are monitoring the chat also during this, so if there's a question that is more of a general question or something that we can help you with, go ahead and just put that in the chat portion. So again, thank you everyone for being here. I want to thank Assemblymember McCarty for agreeing to join us tonight. We are very excited to have you. And a little bit of a bio before I turn it over to the Q&A. Assemblymember McCarty was elected to the California State Assembly in 2014 to represent the 7th Assembly District, which includes Sacramento, West Sacramento, and parts of unincorporated Sacramento County. He is the chair of the Assembly Budget Subcommittee on Education Finance, which oversees the largest component of California's multi-billion-dollar budget. Over the last 5 years, Assemblymember McCarty has made historic investments in public education from pre-K and K-12 to higher education. I know we do have a handful of questions tonight, so if you are ready, I will like to turn it over to you and we can start our questions.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I will spotlight you so everyone can see you, because I know we have a handful of folks in here. Okay, and we also, we kind of prepped everyone and had a bit of a what policy would we like to see conversation before you jumped on. So let's start with the heavy one, the one that's on everyone's mind. As the COVID pandemic has extended into multiple school years now, what are critical factors that legislatures are considering in how and when in-person instruction resumes? So things like what's at risk if we stay remote? What's at risk if we return too soon? And what are some examples of experts that are being consulted in making these decisions?
Well, great. Well, first of all, thank you for your patience. I appreciate it. I don't have a great excuse. I was with my kids and we got sidetracked and doing some stuff. And so I tried to get home, but I'm here. So now we are. So thank you. It's great to see all your faces. Maybe I've met some of you in Sacramento over the years. If not, I hope to meet you all one day in the community or at our state capitol. And I have a lot of respect for you going back and getting your EDD in education. So you're all EDD students, correct? Yeah. So
and we do have some PPA students here too. So
okay, and there we go. So I was a PPA student at Sac State as well. So President Nelson would make me do the stinger up thing if he was here, right? So have a tremendous amount of respect for you. And that's a great question about education and COVID-19, what's happening. Actually, some breaking news. You'll be the first to know it. Literally, we finally have an arrangement with the governor and the legislature and the Senate. We're going to be voting on a bill probably on Monday to help reopen our schools in California. They're frankly reopening anyway, as you know, but our legislation would further provide support for districts, money, frankly, to help with their reopening needs, equipment needs, testing needs, and so forth. Also continue to push the vaccines to make sure our educators, not just teachers, but classified workers and so forth, get the vaccines. But the biggest thing that your question, what I want to talk about is the learning loss, because if kids go back to school, let's say Monday morning, they're still going to have, as you said, we're in this third semester essentially of having missed in-person instruction. So it's going to take some time. You know, my kids they're doing fairly well. They're figuring out, and they have parents that can help them, but some kids don't. We know that. You know, some kids literally don't have the support to help them with Zoom school. But some kids don't even have the tools to go to school, right? You know, you go to school, it's the pencil, the paper, and the chalkboard and stuff for the teacher. But Zoom school is a computer and reliable internet. That's the most troubling thing is we internet. And really, that should be the the justice rights issues, education rights issue of the future. Just like we have rights to water and some basic rights in our society. Internet is a prerequisite to living your life, especially with education. So we need to step up on that. But we're very concerned as far as learning loss. The research shows that the learning loss is real, especially among underrepresented minority students. Already about a half year behind for about a third of the students that the research is, I think PACE came out with in the last few weeks. So and we also, when we go back to address learning loss, some of these kids, young people, they lost a lot because they couldn't do online school. So during more Zoom school to get out of what they didn't get through Zoom isn't going to work. So we want to focus on more in-person instruction. So and we need to realize that it's not going to happen overnight. So it may take up to a year to get some students back to pace. So I think that's the ongoing legislative issue for us in California, is dealing with the impact of learning loss. The immediate is getting kids back safely learning today, but how after we move past that. I will say that I was talking to a Utah lawmaker this week. I'm on a panel of Western United States lawmakers, and in Utah, this is a conservative state. She's a Republican. She's the whip for the Senate in Utah. And she said this is the top issue they're looking at in Utah, is learning loss, especially for underrepresented minority students in that state. So all across the nation.
Okay. So also a little bit of a related question. Last year, the legislative session was disrupted by the pandemic, which shifted attention to COVID relief. What are some priorities that had to be deferred due to the budget crisis and the limited hearing and session schedule that was implemented?
Well, not just priorities, we had to make major cuts for our higher education system, the CSU system. We had to make some cuts. Fortunately, the economy is bouncing back. Really interesting. This pandemic is hammering low-wage people, low-wage workers, predominantly, I'm sure women of color, Latinas, people in the service industry, hospitality, domestic workers. They represent a huge amount, overwhelming majority amount, who have lost their jobs and lost their income. And, the unemployment and those benefits are helping keep people afloat. But interestingly, rich people are doing very, very well in the United States. And so stock market's booming. You know, people are doing very well in Silicon Valley. So that is a big part of the state budget, as you may know. The big piece of the revenue coming in is for the super wealthy in our state, and that is just increasing. So our budget's actually doing very well. So we've been able to restore most of the cuts, and frankly, we're having an increase in money because of the federal money coming in. But we have some concerns in the out years. You know, is it going to be sustainable? So, you know, some of the big picture issues that I've been trying to achieve for the last few years, we had to put on the back burner. One that you all know very well because you're in higher education is financial aid and student debt. We're trying to reform our California financial aid system to have more people become eligible for Cal Grant, because right now we weed out people who just miss out on Cal Grant, as well as trying to help Cal Grant recipients, you know, have the awards cover more. Like some people get the Pell Grant, it helps cover housing and books and food and so forth. We want to increase it even more. So I call it debt-free college, not necessarily free college, but helping your students graduate debt-free. So that we had to delay. You know, my actually biggest priority in education is early education. I'm sure you as researchers and pretty soon EDDs in this subject know that early ed matters the most. If you can do one thing to change the trajectory of a student's life for education, it's early ed. So I have this quest for California becoming a universal pre-K state. And so we had to put that bill on hold last year, but both those issues will be back and going strong in 2021.
Great. I'm going to also jump to this question because we kind of talked about it a little bit in our kind of policy talk earlier. So how can we improve collaboration between advocates for education reform, police reform, and social justice when interests are intersecting, such as reducing police presence in schools and increasing funding for services to students and their families, like placing social workers in schools instead of police? What things need to be considered in order to have the support for this at the legislative level?
I think just the increased equity lens. You know, I think there's already a big portion of the legislature, including me, who have been, you know, fighting for these issues for a number of years, but now it's becoming more mainstream. And I think, you know, America had a big wake up call, you know, watching a man murdered before their own eyes last summer in Minneapolis with George Floyd. And I think a lot of people realized, wow, it's not just policing, it's, you know, other aspects of life, you know, education, our criminal justice system, I mean, voting, healthcare, you know, see what's happening across America with inequitable access to healthcare and even the vaccine. You know, these reports as far as who's getting vaccines in brown and black neighborhoods, you know, not always are brown and black people. So, you know, white people coming in from the other neighborhoods are squeezing and are they cheating? No, but they're finding a way because some of those family members, they don't have the internet access. They don't know how to get online and do all these things. And so there's just these built-in systems that hold people back. It may not be on its face racist per se, but it's just, you know, they say, hey, it's equality. Anybody can call up tomorrow and wait online or hang out and get the vaccine. But, you know, equality, as we know, is not equity. And so the equity lens, I think, is really what we need to focus on. And I think it's happening. And I think we're seeing an increase.
Okay. So I will ask this last question from the kind of questions that were sent ahead of time, and then I've got some in the chat. How does academic research inform legislation, and how has your own research contributed to your policy development?
Well, research is key. You know, we're in the business of making arguments. We're in the business of changing hearts and minds. And so, you know, like you could tug at your soul for an issue like we talked about last summer and George Floyd and having feelings for change, but if bringing about major policy change, you need to have facts to back it up. That because we have to make decisions. Do we spend money here or over there? And so, you know, research is key. And so, absolutely. Oh, great! I see your professor down here. I believe Christian Griffith. He's my budget consultant. Hey, Christian. I had no idea that Christian was part of this, but I'm not surprised. So.
Okay, so this is a question that came from the chat. So the Federal Communications Commission recently awarded $9.2 billion to internet service providers for the construction of rural broadband networks over the next 10 years. California received $695 million. President Biden's recovery plan emphasizes universal broadband and infrastructure modernization. What plans do legislatures have in using this to decrease the digital divide?
We have great plans for this, but I think therein lies an issue. And I'd ask you what you would recommend. Let's say that it would cost $1 million to bring broadband access to people, 100,000 residents in some rural area who don't have any access. Or you could spend that same $1 million helping bring access in an urban area like LA or San Jose, where kids have to sit in front of Taco Bell to do their homework, like we saw this past fall. So I think that's the issue we're facing. It costs so much money to bring those resources to the rural areas, and we don't want to just throw those areas away. But at some point, so you need to just focus on where is the greatest good of that dollar. And so I'm to the point where we should help rural, but we need to focus on these huge urban areas where individuals, they may have the towers available, but they just don't even have the basic access. And we're seeing that in school. We're seeing in our community colleges, students are dropping out because, their families can't share the internet access, and their jump spot can't help, somebody going to work, somebody going to school, and 3 kids in the K-12 school system. So it has a big impact. But I do know that we have a big interest in lawmakers on this topic, and it's bipartisan. And again, it's like I said too, it's rural and it's urban.
Okay, thank you. And then in the interest of time, I will have this be our last question, because we are going to want to move into our breakouts. I think it's a great one to end on. So what advice would you give to a student who is looking to get into educational policy work after graduation, or even someone who might have experience in K-12 or higher ed and want to make a career shift? So whether they're looking to be in the legislature, state agencies, or special interest groups.
Well, we need you. We have a lot of people who work in these state agencies, Department of Education, Department of Finance, the LAO. They're retiring. So we're always looking for for new talent. And so diverse talent, which I see on the screen, we really need you. And so there are plenty of opportunities in government service for school districts, for the County Office of Education, but also, in the legislature, in the policy committees, in these advocacy groups that need researchers and policy people as well. There's incredible think tank organizations like EdTrust West here locally. So there are opportunities for everybody. If somebody is, all of you by definition are researchers. If you want to just do your research and that's it, that's fine. There's opportunities for people to do that. Plus, get out there and speak and get engaged and have advocacy. So I would just find ways to, whether it's I guess you call it an internship, an externship, an opportunity to work on a project with a group, an organization. You don't always have to jump in and get that job and start. You can find ways to dabble, because a lot of times the groups want to dabble with you too to see if it's a good fit. So look for ways to work with organizations. Maybe it's a project, maybe it's a research project that it's a limited term position. So find ways to explore and look for opportunities, and that can tell you if that's what you want, and also it can also provide tentacles to look for other directions as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I know it's Friday night, and I think time and life gets away from us too often. So I really appreciate you still jumping on and answering some of our questions. And just, it was wonderful to have you and great to virtually meet you. So thank you again. This is kind of going to be closing this portion of our event tonight. So I'm going to move folks into our breakout rooms. So I won't take it personally if people need to log off or continue on to their Friday night. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Of
I
course.
appreciate it. And good luck to all of you.
Thank you.
Good luck to all of you. Thank you.
Okay.